And from professional broadcasting to amateur dramatics here in This Week. Welcome, Iain. Did Michael Gove stab Boris Johnson in the back or even the front?
Both, I think, with two knives. It appears that he didn't get hold of Boris Johnson to tell him what he was about to do. The Gove camp say, well, he tried. Not very hard, it seems. I think you can normally get hold of someone if you really want to. So I think that's something that's quite revealing. I think Michael Gove, in his interview with Laura Kuenssberg earlier, he made a lot of the points that a lot of other Tories would have made months, and in fact Michael's been making them for the last 10 years about Boris's qualifications to be...
behaviour.
Yeah.
But what changed in the last 48 hours? Or was it planned in advance?
Well, I suspect we won't find that out until the Sunday papers, when the full story really comes out. There is a school of thought that it was being planned by Dominic Cummings, who's Michael Gove's sort of Prince of Darkness, his equivalent to Peter Mandelson.
Leave campaign.
Yeah, and apparently Michael Gove wanted Dominic Cummings to have some involvement in the Boris Johnson campaign. Boris said no, wouldn't even hand over the list of MPs to Michael Gove, who supposedly is co-campaign chairman, and it sort of all started from that.
It's kind of minutiae of politics, that, though, isn't it? To go back on your long expressed view that you're not fit to be Prime Minister, you don't want to be Prime Minister, just because you can't get your own guy. You know? There
are some very angry MPs in Westminster tonight.
Well, there are, but and it could be the Johnson supporters are very bitter, but Mr Johnson may have been popular in the Tory faithful, but he wasn't so popular in the parliamentary party. Do you think maybe Mr Gove detected a Stop Boris campaign?
Yes, I think that is possible. I mentioned earlier that we could have found ourselves in a position where the Conservative membership elected Boris and the Conservative members of Parliament were only in a very small minority in favour of Boris, and that would have been a disastrous situation. And I think Boris must have smelt that as well. I mean, the speed with which he withdrew, the speed with which he felt that the numbers had just disappeared. But I mean, let's just get to a big picture, because Iain's already alluded to this. Boris was absolutely unsuitable to be Prime Minister. And whatever Michael Gove has done, I must say he has enabled me to breathe again. I was in terrible fear of this country being led by Boris Johnson. He would have been a disastrous Prime Minister. And I entirely agree with Iain that any of the five, but anyway, particularly any of the two front runners, would be a perfectly decent Prime Minister.
And the two front runners, in your view,
are Theresa and Michael Gove.
Theresa May and Michael Gove.
I don't agree with that. I think the two front runners now are actually Theresa May and Andrea Leadsom. I think that Michael is going to have quite a task to get, because people see it in the same way that Ed Miliband stabbed David Miliband in the back. People see this as him. In fact, it's kind of worse.
Ed Miliband won.
Yes, but people think that he stabbed David Cameron in the back and now he stabbed Boris Johnson in the back. Now, that shows a degree of ruthlessness, which sometimes in politics you have to have.
But the assassin never wins. Ask Michael Heseltine.
Well, the favourite also never wins. And now Theresa May is now the favourite.
But moving from prediction to analysis, I mean, if Michael Gove were to win, the only way he could achieve it would be to convince people that a leaver has to be the Prime Minister in order to negotiate the way out of the European Union, because that obviously is the weak suit for Theresa May. And I do believe...
Andrea Leadsom's now occupying that territory.
I understand that she's there as well, but she's less well known. And, you know, I think Michael does have that secondary argument that he has held many of the great positions of state. He has the experience.
Alan, former Home Secretary, Theresa May has her critics. People don't warm to her. They can find her quite a cold character. But it isn't remarkable that she survived, has survived 6 years in the Home Office.
I have to give her that, yeah. I mean, I would sort of criticise her on many things, but that is a remarkable achievement. I think it was Herbert Morrison that said the walls of the Home Office are paved with dynamite. It's a funny analogy, not the floor, but the walls. But many political careers have died in that department, and she's come through after 6 years. For me, the interesting thing, and I wondered how far Iain can answer this question, is where the media are in this. Now, Rupert Murdoch, Anthony Hilton, the great economics editor of the Evening Standard, said that Murdoch told him when he was asked, why are you so anti-European Union? He said, when I go to number 10 Downing Street, they do as I say. When I go to Brussels, they ignore me. And it seems there was an issue here about Murdoch and indeed the Daily Mail, Paul Dacre, where their support was going here, and that their support change from Boris Johnson to Michael Gove. This is question number one. Question number two, you only need a proposer and seconder for the Tories. You don't need a whole swathe of... Why didn't Boris stay and slug it out? I agree with Michael, he'd be a disaster.
Well, he did see support draining after that Telegraph article, which I referred to in the film, which was just all over the place on the single market. I think it led Michael Gove to think, well, hang on a minute, is he really in favour of total leaving of the EU? And of course, a lot of sort of the hardcore Eurosceptics on the Tory benches looked at that and thought, well, hang on a minute. I mean, I know one or two contacts of mine went in to see Boris. He said, oh no, total misunderstanding, and as he often does. But going back to the media point, interestingly, tomorrow's Daily Mail comes out for Theresa May, which I imagine might result in the resignation of Mrs. Michael Gove as a columnist on the Daily Mail. I mean, who knows? So I think that's an interesting.
But Rupert Murdoch is a huge admirer of Michael Gove, and I think has played a role in this. He's not an admirer of Boris Johnson. He likes to have this Australian anti-Etonian view of things. But he loves the Michael Gove narrative of the fishmonger's son from Aberdeen.
You see, what I don't understand
so he has played some kind
for
of role.
those who think that there has been an ambush here, and I'm quite happy to accept there may have been, but for those who think there was an ambush, why on earth would Sarah Vine write in that email about Paul Dacre and Rupert Murdoch? Because I mean, that's dynamite. Well, now, there is a school of thought that Dominic Cummings was behind that email.
Well, let's, people don't really know who Dominic Cummings is. Let me ask you this. Does it matter? As tonight stands, Theresa May, I think, is the front runner. I think we're agreed with that. It may not be a healthy position to be in, but she is. Does it matter that she was a Remainer, even though she was probably a reluctant Remainer?
In her case, I think not, because the key thing here, if I was a Tory MP thinking, well, who do I cast my vote for here? My key criterion would be, if that person is sitting across the table from Angela Merkel or Vladimir Putin, can I trust them to be tough in a negotiation and look them in the eye and say no? And I think with Theresa May, you can absolutely do that. I think with Liam Fox, Andrea Leadsom, you can do that. Stephen Crabb is an unknown quantity. I don't know. Michael Gove? Maybe.
She could hand, of course, the negotiations over to a leaver.
She said she would.
To Michael Gove. So she could give it to Michael Gove if he doesn't win. Because that's what Boris Johnson is
She won't do that. She and Gove hate each other.
Yes, that's absolutely right. But in any case, not really. The Prime Minister cannot subcontract the leaving of the European Union. Of course, on a day-to-day basis, the attending of the meetings, but all the crucial decisions must be made by the Prime Minister.
But she did say at her launch today that that's exactly what she would do, that a leaver would head up.
But she swings both ways, doesn't she, Theresa? I mean, she's in a European sense. I mean, she was
revelation.
She was supposed to be for Remain, but I mean, she didn't put a lot of effort into it.
No, she's a Jeremy Corbyn.
You think of the other three candidates: Stephen Crabb, Andrea Leadsom, Liam Fox. Do any of these three stand a chance of winning?
Stephen Crabb has got far more MPs supporting him at this stage than you might have thought. I mean, I think he's got about 25 now.
Do any stand a chance of winning?
I think they all stand a chance, because we know that very funny thing, as Michael will
that's
say,
certainly true.
Things happen.
Well, let me ask, which of the 5 candidates that are standing, and we know all 5 now, the list is closed, which candidate would Labour find most formidable?
Most formidable, I think, Theresa May. I think the one we would wish for would be Michael Gove. I think Gove's I mean, in that European debate, the things he said, like Albania you referred to, but then he said the British public are sick of experts, and then he's made that remarkable...
So Theresa May's the one.
I think Theresa May's the one.
5 candidates, none went to Eton. 4 out of 5 were either state or part state educated. Should Labour be worried?
Well, we should be worried, and we should be concerned. Of course we should.
We're worried about enough of that.
So we've got enough on our plate to worry about.
Because the posh Tories has been a constant theme for years. I mean, I've made a documentary about it. Is it now coming to an end?
Yeah, I have, but I mean, leave the current... before
you
that,
were in that documentary.
I was indeed. Yeah. John Major, Margaret Thatcher, Ted Heath. I mean, it's not the first time the Tories have had...
Maybe it's not a trend anymore. Yeah. Maybe it's coming to an end. Who would make the better Prime Minister? Theresa May or Michael Gove?
I think Michael Gove. I think because he believes things more strongly. I think because it is important that it should be a Leave candidate. Because I think he's highly intelligent. I'm not saying that Theresa isn't for a minute. I mean, I'd be perfectly happy if Theresa wins. I think we have a very good set of candidates here. I agree with Iain on that. But Michael Gove would be my candidate. I'm sorry he's unpopular. But,
Didn't he write a book about you once?
He did.
Well, you could write a book about him now if he becomes Prime Minister.
I'm too busy on the
Just very
train.
briefly, because we have to move. Who do you want to be the next Tory leader?
I'm not declaring who I want to be because I have
Why not? The nation
I have to interview them all the time, just as you wouldn't declare it, would
I
you?
certainly wouldn't.
No, exactly. I rest my case, Your Honour.
Very well. I thought they were a bit more easy on these matters at LBC. Never mind. Iain Dale, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now it's late. Brexit.